Hello, I'm Macy, a 42-year-old woman who has gone through a lot in her life. Today, I want to tell you about how I became a single mom when my kids were very young. I had met my ex-husband, Harry, through some mutual friend. We hit it off pretty well. He was everything I had ever dreamed of. We both worked good jobs and we were financially stable. While I had no contact with my family, Harry's parents welcomed me with open arms. He checked all my boxes, so of course I said yes when he asked me to marry him after 3 years of dating. Harry was always open about his desire to start a family. I wasn't the biggest fan of having kids, but I wanted to make Harry happy, so I agreed to it. However, once my kids were born, I knew that I had made the best decision of my life. Initially, Harry was an amazing father and husband. He took care of us, sometimes to the point that he even forgot about himself. I truly thought I had hit the jackpot with him. But then, out of the blue, a couple of years after I had both kids, things started going downhill. He had a new coworker join his team and they began to hang out a lot. Now, from the start, I did not like the look of his coworker. That man just looked like a bad influence. My gut feeling was right because pretty soon, Harry was ignoring me and the kids. He would come back home from work and lock himself up in his room to play games. I tried talking to him over and over again, but he never listened to me. We would get into these heated arguments when the kids weren't around. He would complain about me pushing too many responsibilities on him and me being a nag. The thing is, I wasn't asking him to go above and beyond. I just wanted him to do something, considering he was doing absolutely nothing at that moment. And then one day, Harry asked me if he could take the kids to the park while I was at work. He had a day off and he wanted to bond with the kids. At that moment, I was filled with so much joy at the prospect that Harry was coming back to his old self that I readily agreed to it without thinking about my kids skipping school. I was at work when my father-in-law, Dave, called me. It was not very odd for me to get calls from him at that time because he would call me to regularly check in on me, so I happily picked up. But he sounded upset. "Macy, are you at work?" "Yeah, is everything all right? You sound upset." "Well, Maria and I happened to be on our way back home from the grocery store when we happened to see the kids at the park." "Oh, yeah, Harry said he'd be taking them there. They were alone. Lacey was crying and Jax was trying his best to calm her down." "What? Oh my God! Are they okay?" "Yeah, we picked them up and they're sleeping right now." "Do you know where Harry is? Or how long were they there for?" "Jack said that Harry had taken them to the park at around 10 in the morning, and we picked them up around 12. Apparently, Harry had dropped them off at the park and just left." "That man is going to get a piece of my mind." "If you manage to get through to him, let him know that his parents also want to have a stern word with him." "You haven't been able to get through to him?" "Nope. His phone is switched off." "Okay. I'll try to get a hold of him too. Until then, I hope it won't be an issue to watch over the kids until I get back." "Of course not, honey. We'll make sure they eat too when they wake up." "Thanks a lot. I don't know what I'd do without you two." I managed to be kind and grateful even though I was raging on the inside. Once I was off the phone with Dave, I immediately dialed for Harry. Just like David said, Harry's phone was switched off. I don't know how I managed to get through the rest of my workday. I kept making phone calls to Harry throughout the day, but never got a response. Once I was done with work, I decided to go home first. I hoped that Harry was just at home playing some games. I know that it's pathetic, but I still hoped that he had only left the kids in the park to play his stupid games. I called Dave and informed him about my plan, and he assured me that it was all right. I also didn't want my kids to see me getting angry at Harry if he was actually at home. Harry and I had been struggling for a while, but I didn't want my kids to see any of that. I didn't want them to think that the toxic aspects of my relationship with Harry were normal. When I got back home, I immediately noticed that something was different. The house felt emptier. I had a sinking feeling in my chest. I ran through the house yelling out for Harry, but he was nowhere there. With every room I walked into, the more I panicked when I didn't see him there. I walked into his den in the basement and saw that it was completely cleared out. It was then that I actually felt a huge panic attack coming about. Harry had an elaborate gaming setup, and I knew that he would never have moved it anywhere else in the house because we didn't have that kind of place. I carefully walked up the stairs because I could feel myself slowly losing my breath. When I got to our bedroom, I noticed all his clothes that were piled in the corner of the room were missing. I went through his nightstand and it was empty. Our shared wardrobe was also empty. Our bathroom had been cleared of all his products. None of his things were there. He had left us. I was struggling to breathe. How the hell was I supposed to raise 2 kids all on my own? What about surviving on my income only? If I was to pick up another job, I would have no time to actually spend with my kids. In my panic, I kept calling Harry. I didn't care about anything at that point. My dignity and ego were not going to stop me from begging Harry on my knees to come back. But of course, none of my calls went through, and neither did my messages. I must have been blocked. With nothing else to do, I managed to calm myself down enough and made my way back to my car. I hoped that Dave had been able to get a hold of Harry. My heart raced faster the closer I got to Dave and Maria's. I knew I had to put on a brave face in front of the kids first. My kids greeted me at the front door. I hugged them and did a quick once-over to check if they were all okay. They looked happy and fine, and I felt a little relieved. They told me all about their day, and for a second, I had forgotten about my huge problem. Maria sensed my unease, though, so she had my kids leave the room to play in their playroom. She went back into the living room with a glass of water. Dave, Maria, and I sat on the couch and we began to discuss everything that had happened. "Did you manage to talk to Harry?" No, I don't know where he is and I'm freaking out." "What's wrong?" "I went back home and all his stuff is gone." "Gone? What do you mean, gone?" "Gone, as in there's no trace that he ever even lived in our home. All his clothes, his toiletries, his gaming things, everything's just gone." "You think he left you?" "I hate that he's done this." "I'm going to teach him a good lesson if he does come back. That is not how I raise my son to behave." "Do you have any idea where he may be?" "Well, there are his friends, places, and some of his usual haunts, but other than that, not really." "Okay, well, let's start by talking to his friends and then looking around the places he usually visits. If nothing turns up, we'll go to the police." I really did not want to get the police involved in this matter, so I tried calling everyone that we knew. I even managed to find some of Harry's high school friends and asked them if they had seen him around. Maria and Dave contacted their relatives and neighbors to find any information. We even went around the city looking for him. During this time, I had to juggle the kids and work. I was lucky enough to get a week off when I explained my situation to my boss. When it came to dealing with my kids, however, that was a lot tougher. I got asked every single day where their dad was, and I had no answer to really give them. I would tell them that he was away on a business trip, and then they would ask when he'd be back. Thankfully, Dave and Maria had my back a lot. When it got too overwhelming to juggle everything, they took over. Eventually, we did get the police involved. However, they said that they were not going to be able to help considering he left on his own accord, so he technically was not a missing person. Everything shattered at that moment. I didn't know how to proceed from there. Maria and Dave also seemed to be in some sort of trance, just like I was. I remember feeling so betrayed and abandoned at that moment. What happened to all of Harry and I's promises? What about our promise to stay together forever, or to raise our kids to be great people, or to even go on a date every fourth Saturday of the month? I spent every night crying myself to sleep after that. I couldn't even face my kids, because how could I tell them that their dad had run away from us and left us? Dave and Maria came over one night to check in on me, and after I had put the kids to bed, I broke down crying in front of them. Before I knew it, the two of them were crying too. We just held each other for a little while until we stopped crying. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cry this way." "There's every reason to cry. You've lost a husband and we've lost our son. We get what you feel." "Yes, that's why we keep coming over. I guess somewhere inside we feel guilty for his behavior." "You have absolutely no reason to feel any guilt. He was the one who made the decision to abandon us, and he's responsible for it." "Yeah, but maybe it was the way we brought him up that made him—" "Nonsense. I know you brought him up well, because you are here right now. You could have also left us alone since your son is not here, but you've chosen to be here to take care of us and help me out." "You're right. We could never leave you guys. You're family." "Precisely, Macy. I want you to remember that we're family. We want to help you and the kids out in any way possible. Don't hesitate to ask us, okay?" "Of course." After that, we slowly grew out of the hurt and misery we felt. I managed to somehow break the news to my kids about their father's abandonment. I feel like they had an inkling that their father was never coming back, because they were eerily calm about it. They only asked me if their grandparents and I were going to leave them too. I assured them we would never, and that was the first time I didn't feel upset at Harry. Instead, I felt rage towards him. He had shown my kids what abandonment felt like, and now they were going to be cautious about it for a while. But my in-laws and I tried our hardest to do only the best for them and show them that we were never going anywhere. The kids continued to thrive, and I began to see them going back to their happy, bubbly selves. Around 5 years into Harry's disappearance, I stopped checking up on him. I had been religiously trying to contact him up until then, but then one day I realized just how long 5 years was. Harry had missed a lot of firsts of his kids, and the kids had all but forgotten about him. I didn't see any reason to want him back. 10 years after Harry left us, things were going well for us. Jax got into his dream college with a full ride, and Lacey was acing all her classes. I was earning enough for us to live more than comfortably. Maria and Dave were practically living with us because they were getting pretty old, and we didn't want them to be living on their own. Maria and Dave were struggling with their health. Their bones hurt, and in general had issues with their blood and sugar levels. I was dreading one of them passing away. They had been my rock during my hard times, so I wanted them to enjoy a good time with me then. It took years for all of us to adjust to our new lives, and I wanted them to enjoy it to its fullest. I guess it came as no real surprise to me when Dave got really, really ill. Maria and I kept taking turns staying at the hospital when Dave had slipped into a coma. It was a hard time for all of us. For a long while, there was no laughter or smiles in our home. However, things changed when Dave finally woke up. He was still very weak and sick, but he was still alive. We were told that regardless of him being awake, he still didn't have much time to live. The entire family spent time with him at the hospital after that. Dave made peace with the fact that he wasn't going to be there much longer. He was the one who uplifted the mood somehow. Even though he was pretty weak, he still insisted on me getting his lawyer there so he could rearrange his affairs and rewrite his will. When the lawyer was in the room, none of us were allowed in. "Sorry, I couldn't let you guys in." Oh dear, it's okay. Just get your rest in. I just wanted to surprise you guys. That's awfully sweet of you to think about a surprise for us right now, Dave. Of course, you know how much I love surprises. We really don't want this surprise for a while, though, dear. Oh, at least this way there will be at least something to look forward to. I just have one condition for you. What is it? You have to stick to what's written in the will. Promise me that no matter what happens, my estates will remain divided the way I divided them. Of course, dear. Promise. I promise everything will be as you wanted it to be. About 2 weeks after he woke up, Dave passed away in his sleep. I was a mess. He was like a father to me. He was the only man in my life that was there for me and helped me learn and grow. He was also a father figure to my kids and greatly helped me bring them up. Maria and the kids were a mess too. There was so much crying and hurting. All of us had lost someone very dear to our hearts. I had taken up the initiative to take care of all the paperwork and all the funeral services. I knew that Maria did not have the strength for that. The funeral took place 3 days after Dave passed away. There were a lot of people, and it felt good to see that Dave was just as loved by many more people that were in his life. Of course, at that moment, I did feel a pang of anger. I was sure that Harry must have found out that his dad had passed away. I even had Dave's obituary published in the newspaper, but he still never showed up for the funeral. Then again, if Harry did show up, I didn't know how I would have reacted. I guess it was just better that the only people there were the people who truly loved and cared for Dave. The next few days after the funeral were spent grieving some more. In those days, we also got access to Dave's will, and we were pleasantly surprised by it. Dave had divided all his estates between the 4 of us. He gave a lot more to the kids, which honestly I was super grateful for because they needed it a lot more than Maria and I. But he had also left something for Harry. It was a letter. I was desperately wanting to open it and read it, but I knew that it would have been a violation of Dave's wishes because he had made it explicitly clear that only Harry was the one that was going to read the letter. I wish I could say that I wasn't surprised when Harry showed up, but I really was. Thankfully, Jax had gone back to university and Lacey had been away at school when Harry showed up. When I saw his face, I was filled with rage. Maria was in the same boat as me. He looked like he was barely alive. He looked malnourished, his bones were jutting out and his eyes were huge on his now small face. He had a lot of muscle before, and now his arms and legs looked like twigs. His voice was very raspy and his eyes were bloodshot. I had a very strong feeling that he must have spent the last few years abusing substances. Of course, I know that addictions are a genuine illness that needs to be treated. If it were any other circumstance, I would have empathized with an addict, but not with Harry. No, he was a man that had it all. He had the perfect wife, the perfect kids, the perfect house, the perfect job, and the perfect friend. He threw it all away because he didn't want to be responsible anymore and wanted to do substances instead. What the hell are you doing here? What do you mean? I'm here to meet you guys. Cut the crap, Harry. You went missing for 10 years and suddenly you want to meet? I know I messed up, but I really do want to make up for everything I did. Right. I don't think that's possible, and you know it. So tell us why you're actually here, or I will have to get the cops involved. No need to be so aggressive. I'm here because I just found out my dad died. Excuse me for wanting to meet my family. Was that what it took for you to come back? Well, yeah, my dad was my everything, and finding out that he's no longer going to be there just shifted my entire perspective. I feel like crap that I didn't get to spend time with him. Why did you leave then? Because I guess I was just tired with everything going on in my life and I ran away from it. You're disgusting. I hope you know it. Yeah, well, anyways, did Dad leave me anything? That's when it clicked in my head. It must have clicked in Maria's head too, because we made eye contact with each other as soon as Harry asked that. Harry did not care for his father or his family. He was there to collect his inheritance. Of course I was angry. I was so close to lashing out at him, but Maria held my hand to calm me down. She was right. I knew that Dave did leave something for him, and it was not what Harry wanted. Maria walked into her bedroom and retrieved the letter that Dave had left Harry in the meantime. Maria walked into her bedroom and retrieved the letter that Dave had left Harry. In the meantime, Harry and I stood in front of each other in silence. He had this smirk on his face as if saying that he had won. It took all of my self-control to not laugh in his face. When Maria returned with the letter in hand, Harry's face lit up. He almost ripped the envelope with his excitement. He pulled out the letter and began to read. The smirk on his face dropped and turned into a look of anger the more he read. He then looked at me with so much hatred in his eyes and pointed his finger at me. You! What? What did I do? You poisoned my father's mind. Excuse me? He left me nothing, absolutely nothing, and he says it's because you were more of a daughter to him than I was a son. Well, you did disappear for a while. How could he do this to me? Did it not matter to him at all? Of course not. You abandoned your kids, so your father abandoned you. How can you say that? Do you guys not care for me at all? We care for you just as much as you cared for your family these past 10 years. Harry was left speechless. He couldn't believe that he would be treated the same way that he had been treating us, which in my opinion is stupid of him. He had some nerve to show up and demand his inheritance when he did nothing to deserve it. He wasn't even there when his dad was suffering. But thinking about how Dave had used the last few days of his life just to write a letter disowning Harry made me feel amazing. Harry tried to make a fuss about it, but Maria nipped it in the bud. She did not listen to a word he said and told him to get out of the house. He threatened to take me to court and get his house back, but I reminded him that legally speaking, his abandoning the property meant that it automatically transferred to me. He had absolutely nothing to his name. Harry looked pale as a ghost while I was glowing with satisfaction. Finally, I got to see Harry in the same position he had put me in 10 years ago. I wish that it didn't have to involve Dave passing away, but at the end of the day, Harry got what he deserved, and that was enough. Harry left our house and our lives once again after that. He never bothered to contact us again, and honestly, we were fine with it because that had been our reality for a long time. Life went back to normal for the rest of us. It was hard to keep going because Dave wasn't there, but knowing that he loved us so much to ward off a potential selfish jerk was motivation enough to keep going.